According to a Washington Post article, a fire broke out in the Palisades last Tuesday, and the fires have killed at least 24 people and counting, with more missing, and they have taken more than 40,000 acres, an area bigger than San Francisco itself, according to CAL FIRE, with flames claiming more than 12,000 structures and displacing tens of thousands of people. The original fire that originated in the Palisades is reportedly 14% contained, with the second largest fire being in Eaton at 33% contained, and the smallest, the Hearst fire, being 95% contained. If you all haven't seen these videos, they are absolutely devastating. They look apocalyptic. So please, I just want to start off saying, keep the firefighters and the families of those firefighters, the people being affected in the state of California, keep them in your prayers because they need it. And be sure, if you are wanting to give, and you absolutely should, if you are able to give to support the people right now that have lost everything and been totally devastated, be sure that you are giving to some reputable places. If I find any of those, I'll be sure to link them in the description of this video. One of the things I want to start off addressing is that I've seen a lot of specifically Christians online and then people responding to that saying that this is God's judgment. And to be honest with you all, I just don't feel like this is helpful to even speculate. So I'm not going to weigh in on that. I have no way of knowing that, and I don't want that for the people of California. But what I do want, and what I know that we can pray for, is obviously repentance for the people of California, for especially the leadership of California. I know there are a lot of conservatives in California that talk about just the absolute corruption of their election systems and their voting systems. And of course, we know that because they essentially pay illegal immigrants to come in and to vote for them and to mess with the integrity of their elections in California. So like I said, I just don't think that's helpful to speculate. I think the main response that we should give as Christians is to pray for the state of California, for revival there, that God would use this because nothing goes to waste for him. He uses evil for our ultimate good and for his glory. So we can pray for that there. We can pray for revival, that people would turn to him because of this tragedy, and that there would be beauty from the ashes, literal ashes of this, and that we can also pray for the leaders, which we are commanded to do, regardless of if we agree with them or we like them. So we can pray for their leaders that they would repent. I also pray that they are removed from office because they have shown time and time again that they are incapable of leading justly, and I think they should be replaced. And I also think, after we talk about what we're going to talk about today, that you might agree with me that I believe they should be criminally tried for the absolute gross negligence that is going on in the state of California, how they have continued to put their people last, even after a fish. But we're going to get into all of that in a moment. I'm going to try to keep this at 30 minutes today. We'll see if I can do it. The more I dug into this, the more I discovered, and it's just mind-blowing. So what's caused this? That's going to be a couple of things that we're going to talk about today. And of course, we don't have an actual answer from the fire investigation as to what actually started this fire. There has been someone arrested at this time. He has not been charged with arson, but it was an illegal immigrant, and he was at the time he was arrested, had a blowtorch. So we don't know all of the details yet, but what we can say definitively is that they have made this immeasurably worse for the people of California based on their policies, their lack of action, and putting their people last. DEI, environmentalists, mismanagement, disordered priorities, and budget cuts. So we're going to get to all of that in a minute. And I'm not trying to put blame on any specific person or to overly politicize this. Of course, this is a tragedy. I would never wish this on anyone. However, these policies, these evil and disordered policies, they are not only damaging politically, they can be deadly, and we are seeing that in action today. So when people's lives are being lost and they're on the line, then yes, we should ask questions. We should get to the bottom of it, especially in a state that has been mismanaged for so long and proven time and time again that they don't really care about their constituents. Anytime we move away from God's design, from God's wisdom, we're going to face consequences of that in a fallen world. And I pray that people that have previously, again, I would never wish this on someone just because they voted Democrat in that state. That is not what I'm saying. Please hear me correctly. But what I am hoping for is that this will be used as a wake-up call. This is something that people have been sounding the alarm about for years. This is something that even Trump has talked about on the Joe Rogan podcast, and he's also made statements about Gavin Newsom. I'm going to play you the clip from Joe Rogan in a minute where he spoke to a firefighter on his podcast. And we'll see that even Newsom knew that this was an issue and has been negligent about it and has not taken action. So we'll get to that in a minute. But here's a statement from Trump. The governor of California, Gavin Newsom, has done a terrible job of forest management. I told him from the first day we met that he must clean his forest floors regardless of what his bosses, the environmentalists, demand of him. Trump wrote back in November 2019. So this was in 2019. And then he also talked about it on the Joe Rogan podcast. If you saw his interview with him not too long ago, he spoke about particularly the issue with them not collecting the rainwater or the water from up north, and that it was massive amounts of water that they could have been collecting for their city. All right, so let's play the clip of Joe Rogan on his podcast talking about one of the times he spoke with a firefighter from LA.
I talked to a fireman once. He goes, dude, one day, he goes, it's just going to be the right wind and fire's going to start in the right place and it's going to burn through LA all the way to the ocean, and there's not a thing we can do about it.
All right, so let's start with the environmentalists. There's two major issues exacerbating this fire right now. The fact that Los Angeles has reservoirs that hold millions of gallons of water that are empty, and that they do not clear their brush properly for this type of arid climate. And again, this is something that people have been talking about for years. This is not a new issue. This is not something that they were unaware of. And Gavin Newsom is very quick to be pointing fingers and has the audacity to ask for answers about this. Well, he needs to look in the mirror because it's himself, and he knows that. Here's a quote from him out of the New York Post article. "We need to do more and better," he said at the time, promising the state would, quote, "step up our game when it comes to forest thinning, controlled burns, and other mitigation efforts aimed at protecting vulnerable communities, some of which were reduced to cinders this week as the fires devoured the long uncleared brush." Despite his tough talk, Newsom slashed and burned the state's fire prevention budget by around $150 million during one of its worst years for wildfires on record, according to an NPR report. Even more galling, the governor shamelessly embellished the number of acres treated under his promised plan, claiming 90,000 acres were treated when the true figure was closer to 12,000. Newsom knew exactly why and what was exacerbating these fires and even creating them. They are so quick to cry about climate change, to blame everything on climate change, and that could not be further from the truth. Here is a quote about environmental lobbies from the California Policy Center. Quote, "Year after year, environmentalists litigated and lobbied to stop efforts to clear the forest through timber harvesting, underbrush removal, and controlled burns. Meanwhile, natural fires were suppressed and the forests became more and more overgrown. The excessive biomass competed for the same water, soil, and light a healthier forest would have used, rendering all of the trees and underbrush unhealthy. It wasn't just excess biomass that accumulated, but dried out and dead biomass. What's happened among California's tall stands of redwood and ponderosa pine also happened in its extensive chaparral, which is the name of the underbrush in that area and that climate. Fire suppression, along with too many environmentalists, inspired bureaucratic barriers to control burns and undergrowth removal, turned the hillsides and canyons of Southern California into tinderboxes." So what they do is they take this one ground squirrel or this grasshopper that they find, and they try to name it as being this endangered species, or maybe there really is something going on with it. But either way, they take this and they place this above the well-being of the people, or what we actually know about forest management, how the brush needs to be cleared, how there needs to be controlled burns, because when you have all of that accumulating, drying out for decades, of course it leads to it, like they said, being a tinderbox where it's going to be much easier for this fire to continue to spread and burn out of control. All right, so here is the next issue we're going to talk about with all of this is the water. What in the world? I saw these headlines about the fire hydrants being empty or the water pressure being abysmal, and I thought at first that this was a joke. I thought this can't be real. So I went to verify it, and sure enough, this is where we are. The fire hydrants were empty, and there's been a lot of speculation and changing of the story when it comes to just how many of those did not have water. So Gavin Newsom worked with tribal leaders and environmentalist zealots to remove dams and divert billions with a B, gallons of water to the ocean rather than collecting it in reservoirs for situations like this because of fish. They are trying to protect fish. At least that's the surface story. Of course, what I find when I research these things and I dig a little bit deeper, and later we find out there's always money involved. There's always money in their pockets at the root of it. All right, here is a video of Newsom talking about removing these dams.
Of years of work on the project's licensee, PacifiCorp, Pacific Power's parent company, on the parts of Oregon and California, and several state and local agencies, along with several tribes.
The folks out there that exercised your leadership every single day, that dialectic that we had throughout this process, where you expected and demanded more. You expressed that at times. Sometimes it was uncomfortable. Other times it was absolutely justifiable. I just want to thank you for making this moment possible.
The Klamath Basin watershed covers 9.4 million acres, an area larger than 9 U.S. states. Leaders of the Klamath, Yurok, and Karuk tribes attended Thursday. The tribes say the project will revitalize nearly 400 miles of the Klamath River and its tributaries, hoping to help restore river health and fish populations.
This is always what they do. They take something that sounds good and they don't look at the reality of the outcomes of these policies and what they are doing. California is a state that we've seen time and time again. We had the campfire wildfire that killed 85 people and burned over 150,000 acres in California. This is not just any old state where we don't need to worry and we've got an abundance of water. They go through dry seasons like this and you're putting people in danger. So on top of this, with the dam issue, there was a reservoir that holds 117 million gallons that was empty, that was out of commission when these fires started. You would think that water would be a pretty big priority, and that was from an NBC News article. The problem is that we care more about fish and grasshoppers than we do people. This is worshiping the creation rather than the creator. This is worshiping creation rather than stewarding creation or practicing proper dominion over it. I'm not saying that we can't take care of the earth. God commanded Adam and Eve to do that, to go and have dominion over everything that he created. He gave us that responsibility, but that's never on the altar of people being sacrificed. The safety and the well-being of human beings. We are the only thing that is made in God's image. So we have to protect and look out for people first above animals. But please don't hear me saying that we can't take care of the environment. That's not what I'm saying at all, but we should not care more about the environment. And we should not care more about the environment without context than we do people. Just like I said, you're taking this one small issue and you're not looking at any of the rest of it, or you're not looking at how this will actually play out in reality. So another issue are the budget cuts. So, as I just said a minute ago, I gave you the quote from Newsom where he is acknowledging that this is a problem, promising people that he's going to do better in the campaign trail, and that he doesn't actually follow through. So, we have budget cuts for the fire department, upwards of $17 million last year. That's how much the fire department was cut. But the state of California, according to Fox News, had $2.6 billion in the budget for illegal aliens to get free health care. You can't afford it. Some people can't, like regular families cannot afford healthcare or basic things that they need, or young people can't buy a house because of the way they have decimated the economy. But illegal aliens are getting free healthcare, $2.6 billion worth. This is how they pull them in and continue winning elections, because they give all of these free handouts at the expense of their own people. The state of California also purchased tiny homes for homeless people that allegedly haven't even shown up yet. They hand out drugs. They hand out needles. They don't clean up the streets. You and your family can't even go and walk around downtown without something violent happening or passing feces on the sidewalk. But you don't have money for the fire department. We've got to cut their budget by almost $18 million. And apparently we have to borrow these super scooper planes that come in and drop water from Canada, which we only got 2, by the way. There's 40,000 acres on fire, so you'd think we could get a little bit more than that. But why are we not spending money on those, especially in the state of California? But what tops it all, of all the ridiculous nonsense that is going on in this state, this blew me away the most. This is from a Daily Wire article. As some of the most destructive fires in Los Angeles County history continue to rage, so while all of this is going on, California Governor Gavin Newsom and the Democrat-controlled state legislature on Sunday agreed to set aside $50 million to fight the Trump administration and defend illegal immigrants. They hate you. They hate you. They do not care about you. They have $50 million to prepare preemptively to sue Trump and his administration to defend illegal migrants that don't even have the right to be here in the first place. That a huge portion of them have come in as already convicted criminals. This is insanity. But yes, we have 50 million set aside for Trump and to defend illegals. That's just awesome. That's great. The vote on the deal could take place as soon as this week, before President-elect Donald Trump is sworn into office next Monday, according to Politico. California Republicans slammed Newsom, as they should, and the Democrats for focusing on fighting Trump while fires continue to burn in Southern California. Let this be a wake-up call, California, to those of you voting Democrat. They will trade your health, your safety, your life of their own people to cheat elections with illegal immigrants and use them as pawns. Let this be a wake-up call to those of you who vote Democrat. They will trade your health, your safety, your life to cheat elections with illegal immigrants that they do not care anything about. The only reason that they care about them is to use them as pawns in their political games and to use them as a tool of virtue signaling. They don't care what the Bible says about immigrants and to care for the immigrants, but they will use that against you in order to manipulate you, to allow unfettered illegal immigration into our nation and having no idea who those people are. And they don't care if you or your daughters get murdered in the process by those people. They do not care. It's just virtue signaling and manipulation. It's an absolute disgrace. Am I a little spicy about this? Yes, I am. I really am. I have a really difficult time with leaders that are this corrupt and they don't even try to hide it. So yes, sorry, this is a little bit more of a spicier episode, but it's just incredible to me. And I really do hope and pray that this is a wake-up call. All right, last but not least, we'll cover. And let me just tell you, this is not the whole story. There's so much going on. I researched for hours about this. I couldn't possibly get to all of the things and research all of the things that have exacerbated this, made this worse, and contributed to what is going on here. But we're going to talk about DEI, which, if you don't know, stands for diversity, equity, and inclusion. And it's really just a Marxist agenda hidden by feel-good sounding policies. So the LA Fire Department Chief, Kristen Crawley, has had her feet held to the fire as well, which I would like to say here, I do not hold any of the fire department, the actual firefighters, accountable. They have nothing to do with this, but the fire chief is a little bit different. Now, I will say at first, she did make a statement. The first thing I saw was that she made a statement about how she had warned the city and the mayor, I would assume, about, and she said the city failed her when she was asked on the news. But she was warning them, sounding the alarm about the budget cuts, that they didn't have enough firefighters, that they had lots of trucks out of service, and they didn't have the money to fix it. Now, of course, some of that not having enough firefighters was exacerbated by the fact that they were trying to force the COVID vaccine on them, and they lost a lot of firefighters from that. Probably some of their best. But anyway, but I'm going to play you a short clip of something else that she said.
Every day, the LAFD is called upon to respond to crises, and today it is taking a step to resolve one of its own. The department's first ever Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Bureau will launch in January, 1 year since its first ever female fire chief, Kristen Crawley, was appointed.
So by creating this new bureau, our Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Bureau, now we actually have the staff to do the work when it comes to doing a deep dive in regard to how we do business, how we take care of one another in the fire stations and in our work environment.
Okay, so you heard it for yourself. This is what the fire chief of Los Angeles Fire Department is focused on. This is nonsense. This is not what you want. A public service that handles emergencies, that is supposed to save your life under pressure, under severe and dangerous circumstances. But what they're really focused on and proud of is how many lesbians they have at the fire department. And diversity, equity, inclusion, which is really just a masking for forcing equal outcomes and not caring about actual qualifications or if someone is competent for the job. DEI is not about equal opportunity as much as they want to preach that and say that. It's actually just about enabling the racism that they say they hate. It's not always about race. Sometimes it's about preferring a lesbian female over a heterosexual white man. So it's not always about race, but it also includes this topic as well. So that's why I'm bringing it in, because what happens is people that are qualified for the job lose out because of their skin color, and solely because of their skin color. So they say they hate racism, but then they are allowed to do it if that is the accepted narrative of our culture. It's showing partiality, not just based on race, but sexual preferences. Does anybody remember the time that we weren't supposed to talk about that at work? And now it seems like it's all that we care about. God hates partiality. There are many verses in the Bible that go over this. I don't have time to cover them all today, but I'll give you the references. James 2:1, Leviticus 19:15, 2 Chronicles 19:7, Proverbs 24:23, and that's not all of them. It says, do not show partiality to the poor or defer to the great. God hates partiality. You are supposed to judge based on fairness, based on merit, based on competency, not just about your sexual preferences or your race. And what it doesn't say is that, well, if your nation was racist in the past, if it held slaves in the past and you feel offended by that, then it's okay. Actually, yeah, there's that exception. No, God doesn't say that. He says over and over and over again, do not show partiality. Last but not least, the statement that just about made my head explode is from the assistant fire chief, also a lesbian, shocking enough, named Christine Larson. This is mind-blowing. Watch this.
You want to see somebody that responds to your house, your emergency, whether it's a medical call or a fire call, that looks like you. It gives that person a little bit more ease, knowing that somebody might understand their situation better. Is she strong enough to do this? Or, you couldn't carry my husband out of a fire. Which my response is, he got himself in the wrong place if I have to carry him out of a fire.
What? Y'all, I don't know if this is contributing to the anger that I feel about this, but my husband was a fireman for 10 years. He put his life on the line all the time to help people, to help save structures. This is insanity. How did you get to be the assistant fire chief of Los Angeles and you are sitting here essentially admitting that you can't actually carry someone out of a fire, but then gaslighting them to say it's your fault for being in a fire? You could have a fire in your house and almost not know it if you're sleeping with your door closed. This is just an absolutely, utterly ridiculous thing to say. I don't know what else to call this but gross negligence. And I fully believe that these people, Gavin Newsom, Karen Bass, the mayor, and the fire chief, should be held criminally responsible. But I'm not planning on holding my breath for that. In the meantime, let's continue to pray for the people of California and the brave men and women out there fighting these fires.